Hello and welcome, everyone. This is episode number 7. I learned to count in the past week of the In the Nick of Tom podcast. We are here. We're going to start out with reviewing an exciting week 4 of NFL action, and we have a very special guest for you later in the episode. But as always, Quacky Takes with Tommy is here, and Nikki Moneyballs. Nikki, how you doing, man?
What's up, man? I'm having a pretty good week. Weather's warm. Uh, more underdogs are winning in football, and you're
Yeah,
quietly now. What are you? 17-3 in the last 20 football picks.
yeah, 17-3 this season. 17-3 in the Westgate Super Contest, so still a long way to go, but tied for 4th right now. So
Wait, who are
definitely
you in
happy
the
about
West?
that.
You're in the Westgate. You didn't
Yeah,
tell
did
me.
you know that? Long way to go though.
No.
As well, I want to keep it PG, but as the wolf says in Pulp Fiction, let's not go jerking each other off just yet.
Oh yeah. No,
We've got a long way to go, but I
no
but I
circle
can't
jerks.
argue with the start. So what?
Let's just get into some stuff. What are you? What? This is an interesting time of year. We're finally like in football season. Everybody thinks they're an expert. You got people finally talking about baseball because they think they have some angle because there's teams that aren't playing for anything anymore. And I just want to jump right into it. You mentioned something quacky on our live today about, well, how do you know this team isn't playing for it? They could have 3 guys that have contract negotiations next year, and they're absolutely playing for the next 6 games.
Yeah, that's true. And, admittedly, that's one thing that I'm not terribly well versed in as far as like, there's some people like, oh, like he's a free agent after this year or, unrestricted, restricted. And admittedly, I don't really keep, I should do a much better job. But I
What are you
need
talking
to.
about? Like federal securities, unrestricted? No, I'm just kidding.
Exactly. But, it got me thinking too, Nick. Is that something that you could develop an algorithm for or develop some data for?
God, well, thanks.
How these players do not only players who are up for contract negotiations who are becoming free agents, but also maybe rookies who are coming out who have something to prove in these quote unquote meaningless games.
Well, thanks for asking about algorithms, Tommy. Actually, that gave me the idea. A lot of the algorithms, if you guys don't know, another little speech here, but no, I mean, a lot of the algorithms I do are just fairly robust but simple. But I did get me thinking. That's like layer 2 of kind of thinking a little deeper about stuff. And another way to just, here's a plug. I am going to be doing a algorithm master's class. But it's basically interactive. It's going to be down the road a bit, but Tommy, we'll let you know. But essentially, yeah, that's kind of how you would design an algorithm. Is you always start with a thesis. So my original thesis when I designed my first algorithm was actually fade the public. I was playing poker down in Costa Rica, and this guy was like, "Man, if it wasn't for sports betting, I'd have my 3rd house in Florida." Anyway, action's on you, Nikki. And I was like, what do you mean? And basically the idea here is that all these really sophisticated poker players were terrible sports bettors. I mean, terrible. And so that's where I was like, well, if I just do the opposite of them, I'll get rich. Not quite. But it did start me on this path of what is a consistent way to bet that I can generally be on fading the public on the other side of these guys. And to be honest, for the my first theory was I'm only going to bet unders. And I thought about it, I go, that makes sense because the betting public likes to bet overs. They're psychologically harder to bet.
Mm-hmm.
And I can just only bet unders across all sports. I'll add a couple of filters. Boom, boom, boom. I'll be rich in 6 years. And it actually did really, really, really well. And then I don't know if you remember the 2019 baseball season where it was juiced. The year before the pandemic, where balls were just flying and nobody was coaching anyone in the farm system anymore, it seemed. And all the under systems just got smashed in baseball. And then so I thought, damn. But, it's just one of those things. It turns out it was a blip in the radar. Unders are still, with some filters profitable. For example, in the NBA, if you blindly bet unders in the playoffs, it's profitable. So that was just kind of generally kind of circling back. If you're going to have an algorithm, you got to have a thesis that will stand the test of time so that you're not just using old data to try to predict the future, because who knows? I mean, that's the number one thing a data scientist is going to say. The past doesn't predict the future. So,
It's funny that you mentioned the psychology of overs and unders. I was at December of last year. I went to Buffalo Bills versus Tampa Bay Bucks in Tampa Bay, and I saw this guy wearing a shirt and it said "Always bet the over." Yeah,
that's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
There's people, there's social media accounts that are like overs only. And let's be honest, it sucks to bet the under, especially in baseball when it's like 2-0 in the ninth and then you lose because there's like 6 runs and, in Coors Field. But that was like originally kind of my algorithm. So when you said that today, I mean, this is a little more sophisticated, but yeah, the idea is you always have to come up with a thesis. Another simple thing that people can probably wrap their head around is like, underdogs. It's actually quite hard to bet really big underdogs because you don't win very often. But when you do win, you win a lot of units. A lot of handicappers don't tout underdogs because you're the algorithm and social media and how that works. It's better, So there's just a couple of layers, but yeah, we're absolutely going to be in. I mean, we do have a Discord, guys. So yeah, we are. I mean, I've used a few ideas from there.
Yeah. Well, you had mentioned the NBA and our Discord. So, with that said, we want to add our very special guest on here to the show. He is a pillar of our said Discord, and he's known on the island of Maui as the NBA prop daddy. We've got JT McGee here on the show. JT, welcome to the show. Thanks so much for joining us.
Thanks for having me. Appreciate it. Yeah, here on Maui for the moment, but looking back to our mainland move sometime in the next month or so, kind of as the whole season kind of gets underway.
Yeah, so. Excellent. So they call you the NBA prop daddy, and that seems to be your specialty, or so we're told. So tell us a little bit about what you got going on.
I guess so. Just a little bit of background about me. Just kind of growing up, just watching NBA my whole life. When I was 20, I started writing for Real GM. The articles were poorly written, pretty bad grammar, some misspellings, but it kind of got my foot in the door in regards to like just where kind of like how I wanted to watch the NBA and where it was at. Took myself to Spain for a month. Saw Ricky Rubio's 4th game as a professional, and that was when he was 15 years old, fucking scrawny little kid. Because I was watching Rudy Fernandez that game when they were playing for DKB Juventud. Then bounced around Spain for a month, and then met a scout there and got invited to the Reebok Euro camp, and that was like the international basketball camp. Got credentialed into the NBA draft, got credentialed into there, and so the Orlando pre-draft camp, and that was when I saw Paul Millsap just like around a bunch of like that pre-draft camp was just a lot of like cluttered basketball. I'm just sitting there just like Paul Millsap seems better than like this, and then sure enough, second round pick by the Jazz, All-Star, so on and so forth. So then kind of tapered off that after a little while because I didn't realize exactly like what all needed to go into aspects of that kind of line of work. Basically, I just didn't want to go to the university for a journalism degree when I'm spending the first 2 years on maths and science and things I didn't feel correlated with journalism. So, fast forward to the last like couple of years, just kind of like started looking into like sports betting a little bit, just kind of more of a like just in case sort of thing. They're just kind of like interested in like in regards to like how it's being looked at. I think the one couple lines over the last few years that jumped out at me was when the Lakers were favored by like 27 a few years ago. It was like the largest spread that the NBA had seen. And the first time I saw it, like I think I was running a bar down in San Diego at the time, and I was like, "There's no way the Lakers even win this game. Why is the spread so high?" And then sure enough, they lost outright to whoever they were playing.
Well, I was just going to ask you. Do you remember who they were playing? I wonder what the.
I don't know. I think it was like Minnesota or like some like bottom of the barrel type team. But it just seemed like a game that just like didn't seem like it should be that in general, especially in the NBA. Like even when players missing or whatnot, like there's just too much variation between player injuries, fouls, especially. And we'll get into the lines and foul calling some point in the future. In regards to NBA player props, I feel like a lot of lines are pretty average in regards to like how pretty accurate some of them can be. It's really just finding value in where some of the lines are either too heavily juiced or kind of where the plus money's at. So I'll kind of go over a couple of things I noticed last year when I was really kind of honing in on it, and then just kind of focus on a couple of different just players and categories that I'll be looking at this year. So as far as like plus money, I found in defensive stats between blocks, steals, or blocks and steals, young guards who were starting to get minutes were severely undervalued. So Quentin Grimes and Ayo Dosunmu over a span of 2 weeks hit their over props on those, and they were both plus money, usually in like the 170 to like 200 plus range. They hit those, I think, over like 60% of the time, like just with them, like before the lines got adjusted to that as well. So just kind of being ahead of where things are and just kind of understanding where player rotations are. Kind of like just, it's kind of weird to like say to like see ahead of where things are, but that's kind of just watching the NBA, have to see exactly like what players aren't getting the playing time, if somebody's like upset or just trades, whatnot, kind of factor in those sort of things. So,
would you say do you watch a lot of the NBA then during this time, or are you doing more reading?
Yeah, I will. I mean, that's my nighttime. When I'm not working or I'm home, I just power through all of the games, and then it takes me about like 4 hours or so, and then crash out, and then wake up, go to work, or rinse, wash, repeat. Read a lot too. Read a lot of box scores between minutes. I try and look at play-by-play every now and again just to make sure if coaches are staying consistent with the rotations. Second quarter and fourth quarter money lines are going to be a long-term investment for me. I think it was like 30. I'd have to go back and look at it, but I think it's like over 80% of the time under Steve Kerr, the Warriors have won the money line in the third quarter. And that's just like second half adjustments. So even if the money line is like minus 600 or minus 700, like long term, if it's like 80% and those numbers go down to like 400, minus 300 or whatnot, like it's going to turn out to a positive number. I just have to find those. I just have to go back and just do all that, just handwritten data, because I haven't built algorithms like you, Nicky. It's just more of just like kind of getting into it and kind of seeing exactly like, oh, I remember this. And then just kind of just remembering that.
Who needs to build an algorithm? You got it in your head, man.
Yeah, really.
Yeah, I mean, that's just like reading numbers for most of my life. But yeah, I just want to go over a few players who I was kind of like thinking about in regards to these different types of categories too, in regards like where to look to and where I'm going to like have just consistent bets on these or like respective players, and then see how they get adjusted. So as far as like young players, I just mentioned Ayo Dosunmu and Quentin Grimes. I think Evan Fournier is not going to get a lot of burn off the bench, especially with RJ Barrett getting that extension. Thibodeau liking Quentin Grimes a lot. So I think he's going to get enough playing time to be able to hit his over 1 steal, 0.5 to 1.5 steal props, which is usually around those lines. And then also his threes were at plus money a lot as well. So I'll be looking at those. Bones Highland is going to be coming off the bench. He's pretty much going to be the primary backup guard for Denver. With Jamal Murray at the helm, I got a feeling they're going to take him a little easy throughout the season just to make sure he's 100%. So that way, come playoff time, he's able to play 38 plus minutes. So Bones Highland, in regards to assists and threes, I'll be looking at those. Scotty Barnes, I think they're going to let him cook. Going to take the ball a little bit out of Pascal Siakam's hands. So his points, rebounds, assists, I'm going to be looking at all year. And then two other guys, Aaron Nesmith and Nasir Little. So Nesmith, who got traded from Boston to Indiana in that Malcolm Brogdon trade. I thought that he could have been a game changer in that Boston series. He was the only guy who wasn't getting a lot of burn, and the little bit of time that he did get against Golden State, I felt he was making enough of a defensive impact to have even like 10, 12 minutes of action. I know Indiana's a little bit deeper now, but I think if they get rid of Buddy Hield and Miles Turner and just forego like needing picks, just so that way they can ship off Russell Wilson for playing time for Tyrese Halliburton. His overs assists, by the way, going to be hit every single game. Yeah, for him, Nesmith, Chris Duarte, that's a solid wing depth. Indiana's going to be a nice little team to watch if they can kind of just get everything together. Front court's a little weak though. So yeah, their rebounds are going to be a little missing.
Real quick. So I, by the way, love this.
You're spitting it, man.
Yeah. You're like, so you have kind of this on your radar, or do you kind of blindly bet until like there's a stop loss, or do you just kind of have stuff on your radar and then pick and choose each night? Or do you
I just see a number and right away I select it, and then I kind of track that for a couple of games. So for instance, like when Lonzo Ball went down with his injury and Ayo Dosunmu just started getting playing time, I think Kobe White was also hurt, so you've seen extended minutes. Caruso was kind of in and out of the lineup at the time. So I mean the the defense needed to come from somewhere outside of Javonte Green. So DeMar DeRozan was getting his numbers at power forward. Like that was during the run where he's like hitting his overs on the over like 39 points, 40 points or whatnot. I think even Action Network had like a post about it. And then within like 2 games, he just had a bad matchup and I mean, he's due for regression. But within that time frame, Ayo Dosunmu was like the lead defensive guard. So anytime you're going to be on the ball or off the ball enough to be able to like have a chance at either getting the steal or off ball steal or off ball block, I liked him in Illinois, and I thought he was going to be first round pick, and Chicago got a fucking steal with him in the second round. So just seeing where players are and just right fit as well. And then with Nazir Little in Portland, I felt that they were just coming around to becoming a solid team right as he was getting hurt. I think he separated his shoulder, and that's why he was out for the season. It was long season as well, so I'll have to double check that. But I think he's going to get a chance to start. Him and Jeremy Grant are going to be solid in that front court along with Nurkic. Main thing for them is just if they can hide Anthony Simons and Lillard enough to that way the defense isn't all that bad. But they got some depth there with Gary Payton, Justice Winslow. So I'm stoked on Portland this year to kind of make the play on, but this year it's just going to be a styles makes fights with the NBA. Like so many teams are just like stacked accordingly with how they need to play and just like the style of play now that the top 8 to 10 teams, doesn't matter whether they're on the playoffs, it's just based on matchup. So it's gonna be a fun season for sure.
Wow.
JT, let me Go
ahead, Nick.
Go ahead. Go ahead, Quacky.
So this is interesting, and man, it's just a fountain of knowledge here. This is very impressive. So when you look at these props, now I'm not much of a prop bettor in any sport. So,
yeah.
So maybe this is a square question, but it sounds like from what you're saying, like you'll follow, like, will you just follow a player and look at their props, or like for me, like, for example, this past weekend, I throw a couple props in there here and there, and I actually hit a couple. I hit New England defense and special teams touchdown on Sunday, but I kind of do it like case by case basis. Yeah. It sounds like, and correct me if I'm wrong, but it sounds like from what you're telling me is like you have like a couple, handfuls or more of players where where maybe their strength is, where it's mispriced. Do you just look for those players, or do you look at every game and evaluate the props per game?
Everything. Just look at everything and then just find where there are and aren't certain things. Leading scorers, like their scoring average is going to be around the same. Rebounds are going to be fairly similar. The main thing I just try and think about is games like within a couple of years of that time frame. Because really in the NBA, you can't go much past like 5 years for like variation between like a player's arc. So usually like their best years are going to be in like the 24 to 29 to 30 kind of range. And then just kind of taper off based on style of play. Like when Giannis came into the NBA, like the NBA was a completely different type of game compared to it is now. And then in 10 years, when he's going to be at the tail end of his career, like it's going to be a different type of game as well.
Let me ask you about that, because of course I'm obsessed with Moneyball, the movie. Do you think there's things in the NBA that are going to change? Let's say like I heard someone say like this idea of a foul to give is actually like not going to be a thing anymore. Like they're not going to do that. Like do you see that?
What will happen is in order to increase gameplay, the take foul is going to become similar to the like stopping the fast break foul. So where like if the guy's ahead and they're like close to half court or past half court and the guy like just tries to reach out to stop the fast break, now that's assessed a technical foul free throw and the team gets the ball on the side. I think that take foul is going to be along those lines within a couple of years too, just to kind of ward teams from stopping turnovers and fast breaks and things like that. Other than that, there's just small little hiccups that will probably be addressed. But for the most part, I don't see it evolving too much towards where things are. I think the main thing is just how the game's going to be called, because that's what it boils down to, where players foul trouble are and aren't. I got an Evan Mobley story that we'll go over another time. But yeah, there were just a couple more things I wanted to touch up on just because I didn't know how long this was going to be as well. Another long-term I'm going to be looking at throughout the year are contract years. I got to look at the last couple years in relation to players who were about to get paid and getting paid, or like vice versa. Just in the NBA, everyone needs to they tend to go hard for that next contract. Like Julius Randle, before he got his extension with the Knicks, like he was an all-star, most improved player. Following year, this past year, for whatever reason, just kind of like fell off. Could be in a litany of issues. And I'm not one to pry or be privy to like any of those because I don't have any inside knowledge, nor do I really care to right now. But yeah, style play and just everything can kind of go into like why a player just kind of falls off after a contract year. a few players I had in mind for looking for their numbers. Miles Turner, Indiana. Now that Domantas Sabonis is not there, pending he is still there and doesn't get traded to the Lakers for Westbrook, he's going to finally have a chance to be that fulcrum center to see if actually his metrics line up to where he's valued at in regards to being a winning player on the court. He's going to want the ball in his hands, kind of like high post, give Tyrese Halliburton pick and roll options, roll, pop out for three, whatnot. So him, I feel like he's due for a big year just in that regard. Kyrie, because his player option to get picked up or because he declined or whatever, and there's going to be so much drama and turmoil around that team of like why they aren't there. He's going to want to prove some people wrong, and that dude is just too talented offensively to like not get his. I mean, he's still I don't want to say he's a bit of a detriment. It's just rather like his focus seems like it can kind of go in and out in games, and when he's locked in, he's locked in. I think he's due for a huge year because he's going to want to prove a lot of people wrong, and he's going to want to make that money back.
You seem like the kind of person that would be really good at predicting outcomes where it's like, if this team loses, they're going to get blown out.
The blowouts are harder to read. The losing really just kind of depends on matchups. And a lot of times when books don't skew the spreads and over-unders, it's because of player news that's about to come out. So what I've kind of looked at too are, especially with scheduling, is when teams are going to start to rest, because rest like games are there. It's just a thing, just with kind of how the NBA has kind of become more scientifically driven in regards to like taking care of players. I mean, not everybody's built with the mind state like Kobe or MJ or like even just like the players from the 90s to the 80s is like, well, I got like, this is my job, this is what I got to do sort of thing. Instead, it's like, because they have that guaranteed hundreds of millions of dollars, like, well, let's invest this in my body so that way come playoff and final time, I'm set sort of thing. Because it is a long season. I mean, look at Jason Tatum when he was with Boston. Like, they just kept feeding him the ball. You can tell his shot was just a little flat, just tired because, you know, it's a long grind. So to have those extra couple of games throughout the season to where like take a night off or take a half off or whatnot are going to be prevalent in regards to like the scheduling and whatnot. So going to take a little bit of a closer look at those in regards to like full games and whatnot. Because usually the lines get hammered pretty early on. I think it's like 6 a.m. West Coast time, 9 a.m. East Coast time is when the lines come out. And then usually the conglomerates will hammer some of those pretty quickly. I remember one that I was looking at last year was the Knicks and Jazz. It was like over 213. It's like there's no way that this over under should be anything less than 230. So immediately the over got hit, but because of like just the variance of how high they were able to go, they capped it at 219. I think the over is like 240 something. That was when the Knicks were playing in Utah, and the Knicks were underdogs in that game as well. So main thing is like hitting those lines early. It just kind of depends on scheduling as well. And every time a team just kind of has those flat games. So just kind of looking for variance in regards to like the probability of if a team plays strong for 10 games in that 11th game, what's the likelihood that they're just going to shit the bed? And it could be a litany of things. Just, you know, just they have to travel the next day because they start like an 8-game road stretch. So let's just get this game out of the way sort of thing. So yeah, just a lot to look forward to this year. Oh yeah, sorry, I lost.
No, that's great.
I'm about to save your number in my favorites because, good Lord, man! Dude,
yeah,
You remember, Nick? How many times have you been like, Quacky, what happened in this World Series and this year? And I go off for like a year, dude.
Yeah.
This is impressive stuff, man.
Yeah, I mean, I kind of call in the handicapping world, there's two types of cappers, right? There's people that are volume cappers that are just kind of hitting 10, 15 games, and then there's your specialists. Same thing in the poker world. There's your specialists, and I feel like you are a specialist in the NBA, and we are definitely going to save your number. And guys, I don't know, you could just in general, I don't know if you want to, you can plug your socials at the end, but yeah, that was awesome.
Thanks.
Some incredible knowledge there, and I'll be in contact with you. You tell your people.
Yeah, because we're not big props guys. It's funny because we'll do lives and people will throw some props at me, and I just sometimes I'll just say one, and then I'm like, I'm gonna be honest, guys. Like I shouldn't just say it. I'm really not a props guy, and props, the dirty little secret. Guess what? Well, it's not that big of a surprise. Props and parlays are like the two, are some of the biggest. Like when I had never bet a prop or a parlay till last week. I'm not even kidding, not really, but like seriously,
Really?
Well, the main thing with parlay, it's kind of like the lottery ticket. You get more of a rush whenever you have like multiple things kind of happen at once, just because it's like the rarity of it. So it's like, oh, sweet, like my 8-1 like 3-teamer parlay hit, or 3-leg parlay, or like whatever sort of thing.
It's
Well, with
poker
props,
habits. I
especially,
never.
it's like, well, especially with props, it's like it's designed for that one person. It's like, I think that one person is going to do this, and like if I'm right, then like they did this for me, sort of thing. So it's like almost not like a parasocial identity sort of thing, to where like you're linked in and you think like you're in sync with that one person because of just you thought that they were going to do good, sort of thing. When there's so many other issues, like maybe the dude who was like defending him in the first half like tweaked his ankle and he held him to 8 points in the first half, and then all of a sudden his backup can't play shit because he doesn't know that he needs to shade him to the right. So when he goes left every single time, he's getting to the hole, getting to the rack, and all of a sudden he scores 14 points in the first half to hit the over, or in the second half to hit the over 20.5 sort of thing.
How much insider information do you think there is in prop betting?
Prop betting, not a lot. And I think the main thing is that like the numbers are pretty, I've gotten a lot better over the last couple of years. But I think it's just more on the value of the prop itself is kind of where to kind of look for. I think it's more along the lines of like teams in regards to like where some guys aren't going to. And I can't talk for books because I only represent myself.
We have all levels watching. When you say the value of like, what is it? Can kind of break that down for people.
So I mean, like the juice or like the plus money or whatnot, or like the minus money. So like if your odds of this guy scoring over 15.5 or like negative 140, but under 15.5, and it's like plus 130. It's like, okay, so then why is this 130 there? Is the matchup that bad? Is he hurt? Is he getting pulled out of the rotation? It's like different like players rumors or like different things like that, or like the plus money on the likelihood of him like not hitting that sort of thing. So
gotcha.
Okay. And it's kind of more with those obscure like 3-pointers made, blocks, steals sort of things, because those things you're not really in control of the ball. And because you're so dependent on what others are doing, those likelihoods aren't likely to hit. And that's why those plus money values are kind of there. And that's where like honing in on what a player is and how they see the game. So like Herbert Jones, love the dude. Like that dude, I mean, he was the SEC Defensive Player of the Year for a reason. And that whole time that he got burned in New Orleans, like helped them lead into the playoffs as their small forward. Like he's the man. Like, so that's why his props went up from like 0.05 steals, 0.05 blocks, like 1.5, and consistently. And he was still consistently like getting close to them or getting over. And anytime you have anything along those lines to where it's like, all right, do we really want to pay minus 270 for him to get a steal? Well, I mean, if your unit is like $100, you don't want to pay $270, but I mean, if you're going to pay $27 for $10 and it's like a 0.1% increase, and then that's consistently happening, then like over long term, then yeah, you're not losing as much right away versus like building it up to where that way when you include the evaluation into your bankroll, then that way when you take those bigger hits or like capitalize on those bigger bets, it's more valuable and more profitable. So I don't know, just kind of looking at some of those throughout the season. So a couple will be like long-term types between contract years, younger guys, and just kind of like situational as well.
I love that. And one thing, I guess, just to kind of bring it full circle, we have just a few more minutes because, do you see anything in for one thing that's hot that people are first touchdown props? Do you bet anything in football, or do you kind of stay away from football props and just kind of like save your juju for basketball?
No, I mean, football props I was kind of having fun with, but I didn't really know. Like, I follow the NFL, but I don't follow it enough to like go through game by game just because my day-to-day life schedule, I don't have the time for. I'm kind of more focused on getting ready for the NBA season and just kind of following along teams more than anything else. As far as like touchdowns, it's all just kind of just scheme and really just kind of depends on what an offense needs to do in those first couple of drives sort of thing. So as far as like first time touchdown props or anything like that, I kind of stay away from, because it's awesome to hit, but also it's like, am I really going to spend a unit to win 8.5 on this wide receiver catching a touchdown pass when it can easily just be a drop back to the fullback and his plus odds were like 4,500 that nobody took sort of thing.
Yeah. And I really appreciate you even just, honesty in this business. It's nice just to be like, I don't know, that's not my specialty, but when the NBA comes, I'm going to fucking crush it.
Yeah, and that's the thing too, is that like everyone wants to know, and that's kind of where like a lot of it comes into it. So when people like pay for picks or they sign up for things like their Discord, like they want the information because they want to know as well. Because as they get into it, like myself, like when I first started it, like I was getting invested in just the information. So for me, like when I go out or like whenever I read articles or whatnot, for me it's just like gathering information to kind of see exactly what I would like to do or like what I'm thinking could or couldn't happen eventually down the line. And so that's the thing is that like we were just chatting the other day, like at the end of the day, it's human error betting on human error. And so as long as like we're like carefully calculating where those human errors will and won't take place, then we can be on the right side of it. And it's not just coming from like the sharp perspective, rather than like there are times when the sharps are like dead wrong, but also like they were also in line with the public as well. And
that's an interesting point. That's actually some of the best bets, I think, when both sides are on the same side. The books are caught flat-footed.
Yeah, I mean, and there's, at the end of the day, there's only so much you can do when something happens in the first inning or fifth inning, or like there's a bad beat or whatnot. I think it was like a Nerfy that I was tracking. I think it was like a Giants game, and the dude hit a home. There's like count was like 2-2 at the bottom of the first. One strike was all he needed. Home run out of the park.
Oh, I remember that. You
know, it's just like what can you do? You can't help but laugh, but like also, you know, it's just gonna be part of it.
Nerfy, for those of you who don't know, no run first inning. I only say it because I've been asked like a few times. Yeah.
You know, I've never been a big Nerfy bettor, and I'll tell you the reason why. The very first time I ever did it, this was 2007 on Bodog, which is now Bovada. I can't remember, it was the Diamondbacks and somebody else. I bet no run first inning, and the first pitch of the game was a home run, and I just started cracking up. And since then, I haven't done another one.
Oh my gosh!
I was just like, that would be my luck. That was kind of like my pick tonight, where I scored under 3.5, and they scored 5 runs before a single out was recorded.
Really?
Yeah. It was 5-0 at the end of the inning.
Are you serious? That's dude. I like going into the Discord and being like, Houston, and then like and then people are like, dude, you have the Phillies. I'm like, no, I didn't. We have Houston. It's a fade play, and then of course I'm like, no. Kind of just to let people know, hey, you got to have fun with this in general. Obviously, you want to win, and we do. You know, you want to have an upward sloping equity curve. But if you can't laugh at yourself, it's going to be a long road ahead.
You know, I would say my call tonight rivals that first pitch home run Nerfy. Put it in the quacky hall of bad bets. Add it to the shelf.
Yeah.
That was.
What are you gonna do?
Well, that's how it goes sometimes.
Well, you know, do you have any? Are you on social media? Did you
plug anything, JT?
I don't have anything set up for myself. I'm kind of in the process of getting that. So when we kind of get closer to the NBA season, the next week or two,
we'll have you back on.
Yeah, we definitely
will have you back on.
We definitely will, and I'll go ahead and I mean, if you're an NBA fan and you're watching this, and after listening to JT, if you're not in our Discord, I think you should join. What just a fountain of knowledge, man. Thanks so much for coming on here.
Yeah, thanks for having me. It was nice to chat some NBA, and I'll be in Discord a lot throughout the season, just in between work and whatnot. Like I'll just be going in here and there. So anytime anybody wants to just like follow along, you don't have to ask anything. You don't have to be part of the discussion. Just kind of sit along and read. Because for me, it's like the discourse of talking shop about the NBA kind of is what it's all about, and kind of helps the season go through. And I'm slowly getting to NHL as well. But just this year is going to be focused on NBA for sure.
Yeah. Well, yeah.
All right.
Again, thanks for coming in.
That's going to do it for us then. JT, thanks so much for coming on.
Thanks, y'all. Appreciate it.
See y'all next week. Take care.